Okay. Paul, you're going to have to turn off the sound. Sorry. Or turn yourself way down. Paul's listening in another part of the house. Um, I am Lisa Blanchard. You all know that. And I do welcome you to this public forum tonight about Bridge Magazine and the loss of local news. Our board, your board, has organized this forum, and it's a topic I'm especially excited about because Bridge Magazine is really my only source for state news now. And I value their professional team and the depth of their coverage. So you'll learn all about that tonight. For those of you unfamiliar with the league, and I know you all are, but I want to say so we all get used to it. We are a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed participation in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influence public policy through education and advocacy. We do not support any political candidates or any political party. We do have positions on public policy, however, and those positions inform our advocacy work. So before I introduce our speaker, please change your format to speaker view and mute your microphone if you haven't done so already. Sue Vandervenner will be fielding your questions in the comment section, so please send those in as you have them, and we'll ask your questions following Justin's presentation to us. Our speaker tonight is Justin Hinkley, who's worked in journalism for several decades. He started out as a cub reporter in his hometown of Battle Creek and later worked as an investigative journalist at the Lansing State Journal. He then moved to the Alpena News, where he served as managing editor and publisher. Justin joined Bridge almost a year ago in February, but continues to live in Alpena with his wife and son. And Justin, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Excuse me. I want to apologize up top. I've been a little bit under the weather, so if my voice cracks or anything like that, that's why. So I've got two presentations I want to go through. They're both pretty quick, and I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. Maybe.
You should be allowed. Yep,
I am allowed. Let me see if I
yep.
can find it. There we go. And then I'll go to my presentation slideshow. Can you all see the slideshow now? Excellent. All right, so I'm first going to go over a brief history of Bridge, Michigan, and what we're doing now with our expansion into northern Michigan and into western Michigan. And I hear that there's an expert on the call, so if I get anything wrong, please yell at me. This is just what I've learned since joining Bridge. We're going to go over the history of Bridge, what Bridge is up to today, how Bridge approaches its coverage, the expansion up north and out west, our newsletters, and of course, I got to give a little plug about how you can give to Bridge to support the work that we're doing. So, Bridge, Michigan started actually with the Center for Michigan, which is what founder Phil Power calls a think and do tank. That started in 2006, and they hosted a number of community conversations around the state, trying to get a sense of what was needed to make Michigan a better place. And in 2011, one of the things that they decided was that it needed high quality, nonpartisan journalism and engagement to help make Michigan a better place. And so they founded Bridge Michigan. And in 2020, they founded Bridge Detroit, which is a Detroit specific arm of the Center for Michigan's journalism. This is Bridge, Michigan today. Started with just a handful of people working out of Phil Powers' barn. And today we have an office in Detroit and an office in Lansing and several reporters working spread throughout the state. We have reporters covering health, business, the capital, the environment. We have a breaking news reporter, education reporters, And then we have a team of editors who oversee those reporters, including me. I work as the regional editor responsible for Northern Michigan and West Michigan. Bridge covers Michigan with a focus on impact and innovation. So we aren't like a typical newspaper. A typical newspaper is what you call a paper of record that covers all the goings on within their specific coverage area, city halls, and things like that. Bridge is a little bit different in that we focus on a statewide audience and we really look at stories that are about real impact to real Michiganders. We want to do stories that might make a difference and talk about things that are actually affecting people. And we try to do that in innovative ways. So we're all over social media. We do reels on Facebook, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, just all the ways that we can think of to reach audience to get the people the information they need to make informed decisions about how to interact with their state. We focus on what makes a difference, like I said, but we also have fun along the way. So we do things like in our daily newsletter, we have a photo puzzle where we show you a little bit of a Michigan landmark and a little bit more every day and ask readers to guess what that puzzle is. In my newsletters, I give you 5 clues to describe a northern Michigan town and ask you to guess which town I'm talking about. So we interact with readers. And we also tell stories that highlight the good things about the state because we're not just about what's broken, we're also about what's working, and so the things that can be replicated. For example, this summer we asked readers to help us put together the ultimate Michigan summer bucket list, and that was readers voted and suggested things that you could do to have the ultimate Michigan summer. And then we narrowed that list down to 10 things. And then we went out and did those things and shared our experiences with you in video and story and photo. So yeah, Bridge is not just about hard and heavy policy, but also about what makes Michigan good. So some of our highlights, like I talked about, we had the Michigan Dreaming Ultimate Summer Bucket List, which was a lot of fun. I was the main editor on that series, and it was just tons of fun to see all the cool things that Michigan can do, or that you can do in Michigan. On the more serious side, we looked at the collapsing whitefish population in the Great Lakes, and our reported prompted a bill in Congress to put $500 million towards research on how to combat the invasive mussels that are causing the collapse of the whitefish. And we put together a series on the K-12 education crisis about how our schools are underperforming and looking at what might be behind that and what might be done to, excuse me, to make education better in the state. And we went to Mississippi, of all places, which started at the bottom of national education rankings and has climbed up near the top by using science-based curriculum, staying with science-based curriculum to allow it time to work. And things like that. So we didn't just look at what was broken, we also looked at what works and how we might replicate that. In 2025, Bridge decided to invest in Northern and West Michigan coverage. So Bridge realized that we were really, really good at covering the Lansing region, the Detroit region, things like that, but we weren't so good at covering Northern Michigan and Western Michigan. And if we wanted to be a statewide news organization, we had to cover those regions as well. So they created my position, regional editor, to oversee the coverage of Northern Michigan and West Michigan. We launched specific newsletters for those two regions. And in Northern Michigan, we have partnered with Interlochen Public Radio to form the Northern Michigan Journalism Collaborative. And what that is there's nearly 2 dozen up north news outlets that work together on stories and share stories so that we can get um, more information to more people and help those news outlets that don't have the time or resources to do deeper dive reporting, help them have deeper dive reporting in their pages and on their websites and on their broadcasts. So newsletters are, we have found, is actually how we reach more people and we get the most engagement through our newsletters, more so than our website. And so there are newsletters for every beat at Bridge. Every reporter works on the newsletter. There's the Politics Watch, Environment Watch, Education Watch, Health Watch, the North and West newsletters, the Daily, Outdoors Life. And you can sign up for all those newsletters on that QR code there, which I'll leave up on the screen for a couple of minutes. You just take a picture of that with your phone, and it'll take you to our sign up page that will so you can sign up for the newsletters. You can also go to bridgemi.com/sign up. And newsletters are really fun to write. They are kind of a recap of the day's news or the week's news, depending on the newsletter, but with some analysis in there. And we link out not just to our own reporting, but to other reporting around the state, because we believe that it's all about informing people, not just promoting our own work. Finally, Bridge depends on readers like you to do what we do. We are a nonprofit news organization. We are funded by a number of foundations, but also a good chunk of our income comes from reader donations. And it's sort of like NPR. We ask people to donate to our cause, and that helps us do what we do every day. So holding people accountable, telling the stories of Michiganders who are working to make this a better place, and having fun along the way, like we did with the bucket list, all comes from readers like you donating. So you can go to bridge.fundjournalism.org/donate, or you can scan that QR code there. And I will also send out these slide decks to Lisa so she can share them with the group so you can have those. So that's that presentation. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the problems facing local news. Let me see if I can get to that presentation. Can you all see the future of journalism and democracy?
Mhm. Mhm.
Excellent. I'm using technology appropriately. How about that? All right, so this is a presentation I actually put together when I worked at the Alpena News because this is a topic that a lot of people care about and that I think is important not just to the survival of my job, but to the survival of a working democracy in America. So I don't have the sources for all this information here because it comes from multiple studies. I can get that information to you if you'd like. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what happens when newspapers close, because there have been a number of closures, of course, around the country, and researchers have actually been able to track what happens when newspapers close. You see that voter participation goes down, government spending goes up, government corruption goes up. There's more cases of embezzlement and things like that. Small businesses close. Nonprofits collect fewer dollars because there's fewer people, or excuse me, there's no one telling people about the needs in their community. You see things like school bond proposals fail because there's no one talking about why schools need that money. And overall civic engagement declines. You see fewer people participating in things like Rotary Club, um, Kiwanis, things like that. Those things go down when newspapers close. This is a quote I just wanted to share with you. The only way we can talk to other people is with some common understanding of the truth. Um, I think that that's really what this is all about, is we have to have a basic underlying understanding of the facts so that we can debate real policy. If we can't even agree that the sky is blue, how are we going to do anything about it when it's not blue? We have to have a common understanding of the facts, and that's what newspapers and TV news and radio news and online news is all trying to do, is to set this common understanding of the facts. So this graphic is a little bit hard to see on your screen, I am sure, but all of the light blue areas are places where only one newspaper exists. These are American counties, and all the
Mm.
white places are places where no newspapers exist. So you see a good swath of the country now has only one newspaper serving them. And when that happens, that means that no one newspaper can get to every news uh, item out there. There's also less competition, so there's no drive to get at the news of the day. And certainly when there's no newspaper, people are just not getting any information about what their government is doing. They're not finding out what the needs of the community are, and all of those bad things that I talked about before are starting to happen. So, an average of 2.5 newspapers close every week. We've lost 2,900 since 2005. More than half of all U.S. counties are considered news deserts, which means they have only one newspaper. Readership fell about 67% from a 1984 peak. And unique visitors to top websites peaked at 13.9 million, but has since fallen to 8.8 million. That peak is because of the coronavirus pandemic.
Mhm.
People were really interested in what was going on with that and tracking newspapers and news organizations of every kind around the country did a really good job of reporting on case counts and closures and all that sort of stuff. So that's where newspapers stand today. Why is this happening? I think that it is a loss of trust in institutions. You see that people are trusting just about everything less and less as time goes on. And I looked in there, this is from Pew. Trust in the military fell 83% to 74%. Trust in police fell from 78% to 69%. Trust in the elected officials fell from 37% to 24%. And trust in the media fell from 48% to 40%. So people are just trusting everything that counts as an institution less. I think it's not just the media. I think that the media is part of that, that we are losing our faith in the things that have held up this country for so long, and the media is getting swept up in that. Why does this happen? I think it's a fractured media landscape. So it's not just your traditional media, but there are just so many places for people's eyeballs to go now. So many channels on TV, so many social media networks, so many websites. So people are just not interacting with media the way that they used to. And so they're not uh, seeing it for themselves to be able to build that trust with it. Um, Obviously, the fractured advertising landscape plays a big role. Media used to be 80% advertising to 20% circulation based. It's now about 50-50. And when advertisers have more places to put their ads, that has sucked revenue from media of every kind. And when you have less revenue, you have fewer people, you can do fewer things, and people notice that and they lose faith in us because we're not doing all the things that we used to be able to do. Obviously, the economy as a whole plays a role. When the Great Recession happened, we lost real estate advertising and we lost auto advertising like crazy, and it just never came back in the same way that it did. So when the economy is bad, people aren't spending in their advertising dollars, and that has an impact. And then just generational changes. People uh, don't interact with the same things that they used to, the way that their parents did, and they have more varying interests, and oftentimes that does not include the media. So what can you do? You can certainly subscribe to your local paper. Obviously, I'd encourage you to support Bridge, but wherever you live, subscribe to your local paper. They need you more than ever because advertising is not built holding them up the way that it used to. You can advertise with your local paper, place a classified ad. That's more revenue for them. That's another way that you can support them. Shop at local businesses that advertise with your local paper, and tell them that you saw the ad in the paper. Advertising does still work. It does still drive dollars to local businesses, and local businesses especially count on local media to tell their stories. And if you are shopping at those businesses, it helps them know that it's working, and they'll continue to do that. Interact with your local paper. Letters to the editor, calling the editor, talking to the editor, all those things help the papers keep a pulse on the community and know what's going on, know how people are feeling, and that just helps the paper thrive. And then, of course, vote. Staying engaged civically. The more you vote, the more you're going to care about what's going on, and the more you're going to be paying attention to the people who are writing about what's going on. And that's the end of my presentation. Let's see if I can stop sharing my screen here, perhaps.
Well, people are sending in their questions. I warned you, Justin, that I might ask if you could talk a little bit about what communities are doing as alternatives that you're aware of that have lost papers, especially in Michigan.
Yeah, so there are a number of nonprofits popping up around Michigan and around the country. In the Traverse City area, there's the Traverse Ticker. I believe there's a Leelanau Ticker. There's in Grand Rapids, there's the Rapidian and New Wave Media. In Detroit, there's the Outlier. So people have recognized the need for people to be armed with information so that they can make better decisions about how to interact with their government, how to interact with their communities, how to interact with their neighbors. And people are supporting that. Foundations are supporting that. Individuals are supporting that. And that is really propping up the news ecosystem in a lot of communities. And I think that there's also you're seeing more partnerships among media. Back in the day, when I started, there was no way in heck that we were going to tell another media outlet in our community what we were working on. But
Oh.
we've realized that we can't do everything that we used to be able to do. And so we have to share our resources so that we can continue to serve the communities because ultimately that's what we are here for. You know, newspapers don't exist to make money, at least not in the minds of the journalists, and they exist to serve the community. And so I think that you're seeing a lot more nonprofits in collaboration to fill in those gaps as much as we can.
I know that people have sent in questions, so Sue, go if you could read some of those, that would be great. And you're muted.
Okay. One is pretty simple. Somebody asked how many local newspapers are left in Michigan.
Oh boy. I don't know if I know the number. Let me see if I can find that very quickly. It is definitely fewer than it used to be, especially fewer daily newspapers. Okay, about 220 according to the Michigan Press Association. That includes both dailies and weeklies. And so a lot of newspapers that were every day have been pulling back. They're online every day, but they are in print fewer and fewer days of the week as a cost saving measure. And so for readers who count on the print version, they're getting less news. But yeah, about 220 newspapers still around the state.
We have another one. What newspapers in the region are a part of the Northern Michigan Media Group that includes Bridge and WIPR?
Yeah, so There's more than 2 dozen, and I'm not going to list them all off, but I can list some examples. The Boyne Citizen, Cadillac News, Leelanau Enterprise, Betsy Current, the Record Eagle is part of that. Traverse Magazine, WCMU, which is an NPR station that serves a lot of northern Michigan, is part of that. The Glen Arbor Sun. So we really stretch across most of, I guess, what you would call the northern lower peninsula. We got most of that covered, and we've also got parts of the UP represented in that group.
Well, you may have just answered that. Is the Upper Peninsula on Bridge, Michigan's radar? Looks like their newspapers have disappeared.
Absolutely. My charge as the regional editor covering Northern Michigan, I essentially consider Northern Michigan from the Mason County, Aranet County line, and everything north of that, including the Upper Peninsula. So, like I said before, Bridge is not, we are a daily news organization, but we're not like a daily paper. So we don't make it to every town hall. We don't make it to school board meetings. We try to keep tabs on what we can by watching other local media and working our sources. Um, but so we're not going to get everything. We're not going to replace some of those papers that have gone away, but the Upper Peninsula is absolutely on our radar.
Good to
I
know.
asked him very specifically about, is it the whole first district? And it really is.
Yes.
The whole UP and the 20 counties in the lower. So
Let me go back to this one. Has consolidation in the news business impacted the editorial discretion of local news outlets? For example, like Sinclair and USA Today.
Um, I don't know that I'm the best one to speak to that. You'd have to ask each individual newspaper. I would say that every news organization I've worked for, the editorial decisions have been separate from the business decisions. Um, a well set up news organization is going to have a firewall there between advertising and editorial decisions. So a good news organization is not going to write or not write something based off of who's advertising or even who owns the organization. And that's been true everywhere that I've worked. That's very, very true at Bridge. Bridge is vi by policy editorially independent. And we make it clear to our funders that just because we accept your money does not mean that you have any say in what we do and don't cover or how we cover what we cover. And so I believe that good news organizations establish that firewall, maintain that firewall, and do good work regardless of where the money's coming from. Now, some people may not feel that way, but again, I think you'd have to ask the reporters how they feel. It's hard to tell sometimes from the coverage whether it's uh, being influenced one way or another because sometimes we see in coverage our view of the coverage is influenced by our own biases. So sometimes people may not be writing everything that you want them to write, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's influence coming from one way or another. But yeah, I think you'd have to ask the reporters who work there if they feel like they still have the independence that they need to do their job.
So I was going to ask, how does the consumer recognize a good news organization? Is that what you would tell them, is to try to talk with reporters?
That's a good way. I think that there are a few telltale signs of a good news organization. One is they have an ethics policy that is public facing. You should be able to find it on their website. If you can't find it on their website, you should be able to get it from the editor if you call them. Um, you should look for corrections a good news organization, everybody's going to mess up. We're all humans. We all have jobs, and families and stress and all of that. And we're going to mess up from time to time. But a good news organization that messes up is going to own up to that and is going to issue a correction and is going to tell readers that they got something wrong. So I always look for news organizations that issue corrections, not as a bad thing about the newspaper, but as a good thing because it's showing that they are actually owning up to their mistakes and making sure that readers know what the accurate information is. I think I always like to look at, have they been proven right? Um, if a news organization writes a story and that prompts an official investigation, and the investigation shows that the facts that the newspaper uncovered are true, that's a good sign that the newspaper is doing what it should. Are other news outlets reporting similar things? You know, every news organization will loves to have a scoop, but if uh, the Washington Post and the New York Times and Reuters and the Associated Press and the Wall Street Journal, if they're all reporting similar things, you can probably guess that it's the truth. Um, I think, yeah, I think those are some of the symptoms of a good news organization.
Thank you. Um, okay, we have another question here. I think they're asking about the Petoskey News Review and whether that's part of the media group, the Northern Michigan Media Group, and is the list of the partnership online anywhere to see the whole list?
It's not at the moment. The list is not online at the moment. We are working on maybe setting up a website. But no, the list is not available online anywhere right now. And as of right now, the Petoskey News Review is not part of the organization. Um, we did reach out to them, but no, they're not part of it.
Um, Another one we have, does you mentioned getting the scoop, being the first one to report on something. Does the drive to get a scoop contribute to mis or disinformation?
Yes. So I think the perfect example of that is when the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the Affordable Care Act. They struck it down. I forget how it was, but the beginning of their opinion made it sound like it was struck down, but then after later in the opinion they upheld it um, as different than how the Obama administration thought it was going to be upheld. But in any case, a number of news organizations read the first part of that opinion and broke the news that the Affordable Care Act had been struck down, and then had to walk that back because it was wrong. And so, yeah, I do think that especially in the earliest days of the internet and social media, um, media organizations wanted to be first and wanted to be fast, and that led to a lot of mistakes. I do think that the media as a whole is learning from those mistakes and taking more time and realizing that it's better to be right than to be first. But certainly, if you're not careful, the pressure to be first can cause you to make mistakes. I think a good news organization has checks and balances to make sure that doesn't happen, has an editor that's going to press the reporter and say, hey, are you sure you got all your ducks in a row before we hit publish? Um, and uh, and I think that that's going to help with that sort of thing, but it's certainly a risk.
Um, the next one is uh, a big one. As an insider, what is your view of the state of truth in media currently, and how can you recognize a truly credible news source?
Mm. I believe that legacy media, especially print media, is still doing the good job that they've always done. I think that sometimes the national media can get too much into palace intrigue and scandal and things like that that don't really matter to everyday Americans. And I think that national TV news has too many talking heads. Um, but I think that by and large, uh, legacy media is still doing the good job that they've always done. I think that your local paper is absolutely probably doing a very good job, um, because you can't hide in a small town. From, if you're wrong, someone's going to tell you, and they're going to tell you to your face. So I think you can trust your local paper. I really believe that we have put ourselves into these echo chambers on social media where we surround ourselves with people who think and feel the same way that we do, and they reinforce our beliefs, even if the facts show us that those beliefs are wrong. And there's been research about that as well. There have been people who have been told something, and then they are, shown the facts that show that that thing was wrong, and they still believe it. And I think that that has created the perception of bias that doesn't always exist. I think in my years as a newspaper editor and publisher, I had a lot of people very upset with me about something that we had written, even though I knew it was the truth. I had personally talked to a source or seen a document or attended a meeting and knew it was the truth, but they didn't want to believe it and they were adamant that it wasn't the truth. So I think that sometimes our personal biases can paint a picture of bias that isn't there when we're reading something. And as far as how to tell a good news organization, I think it goes back to what I was saying before. Look for corrections, look for an ethics policy, um, look for balance, and balance is not boathism. Balance is not giving equal weight to two sides of an issue just because there are two sides.
Mhm.
Balance is looking for the truth, giving everybody an opportunity to refute that truth if they want to, and showing the evidence. And balance is also not writing a good thing about this candidate and a good thing about this candidate. It can be writing bad things about both candidates. It's holding everybody to the same standard is balance.
You mentioned legacy and in particular print media. In your opinion, is there a difference between print and digital newspaper? I mean, beyond the obvious difference.
Um, no, I think
Mm.
the journalists who have been pushed online, by and large, are still doing the same work that they've always done. I do think that when you're looking for news online, you have to be more careful because there's a lot of false information out there. But I think that a news organization, just because it's online, does not mean that it has any less standards or worse practices. I think that I love holding a physical paper. I'm an old school guy. I love getting ink on my fingers. Uh, but I read a lot of news online and on apps, and it's still good news. So it's the policies and practices that make a news organization good and trustworthy. It's not the medium.
This is my own follow-up to that, but I know when I used to read print newspapers, the stories were had to fit within a certain frame. And now some of the stories seem to be really long because they can be. and I'll get 3/4 of the way through and go, okay. So is that a problem?
Uh, yes. And not a problem in terms of trustworthiness. It's a problem
Right.
in terms of bad training on the part of the reporter. My editors, when I was a young reporter, always told me a story needs to be as long as it needs to be, no shorter and no longer. And the operative words there is needs to be, not wants to be. Um, but kind of to your point, one good thing and one difference about online versus print media is online we can show our cards. And that's another way,
Mm,
thank you for reminding me of that. That's another way that you can look for a trustworthy news organization. When you're reading them online, are they linking to primary sources? Are they showing you the documents? They can embed documents right within their
mhm.
stories. Do they have video and photos that tell the story and back up what they're saying in the words? So I think in a lot of ways, digital media should have added trust because we can show our cards, we can show our work, and we do, and um, and I think that's been a good thing.
Um, Another question here. Do legislators now recognize the importance of bridge and seek you out or respond well to your journalists?
I believe that we get the same respect that any other Michigan outlet receives. And so it depends on the lawmaker. It depends on how they feel about the media. It depends on whether we've taken them to task in the past or not. But yes, we do get the same level of respect. We get credentialed and we have access to the Capitol just like any other news organization.
Someone else is asking, this is a good one. Do you have any examples of deeper dive things that Bridge has covered about Northern Michigan, and conversely, examples of how that deep dive has freed up local media to do more paper of record local government coverage that they might not have done otherwise?
I don't know that we're getting more um, local paper of record work out of the Northern Michigan Journalism Collaborative because I think what has happened is as newspapers have or news outlets of any kind have fewer reporters, they're pulling back from the deeper dive work and focusing on that paper of record stuff because they know that that's what they need to do. Um, so I don't know that um, what we're doing is they weren't doing the deep dive work necessarily, and I won't say that's exclusively. Certainly, they are. Some outlets did. We did at the Alpena News. We tried to do uh, deeper dive stories at least once a quarter, um, but a lot of them weren't doing that, and so we were able to bring that to them in ways that they didn't have before. And we've done everything from an investigation into a township that was removing its zoning in a way that would help one of the township trustees build a gravel mine to looking deeply at how the reopening of the Baldwin prison as an ICE facility would impact the community there. To one of my favorite stories was a deep look at how the ice storm that hit us in March impacted the uh, lumber industry because it
Yes,
really,
excellent.
yeah, it really decimated, forced everybody to harvest a lot of wood that wasn't really ready to be harvested. So they had a great year last year, but they're going to have some bad years in the future because all the wood is now gone. So that's just some examples of some work that we've done that other outlets don't necessarily have the time to do anymore because they've been focusing on that paper of record stuff that they have to do and is important for them to do.
I have to add that I quote that article. Tell people, like, it never dawned on me, like, you can't move a lumber mill. Like these,
Yeah.
Mm,
that
yeah.
was a great
Yeah.
article.
Um, what are your readership numbers compared to the Detroit papers?
I don't know the Detroit Papers numbers off the top of my head. I know that we have, and actually, you know what? Now that I say that, I don't know our numbers off the top of my head. Um, I'll tell you that I have about 9,000 subscribers to my Northern Michigan newsletter,
Oh.
and I think we have 60,000 subscribers to the daily newsletter. That does not encompass all of our audience because we have people who see us just on TikTok. We have people who see us just on our website or just on our app. So I don't know actually the total audience that we have off the top of my head. It's a big one. And I don't know what the Detroit Free Press or the Detroit News's numbers are nowadays, so I don't know how we compare.
Here's an interesting one. Talk more about Bridges' presence on TikTok. Pew reports that most young people get their news passively by what comes across their feeds. Do you get any feedback on your TikTok efforts?
We do. So we have a social media team, so I'm not directly involved in a lot of that, but I do believe that TikTok is actually our fastest growing audience. Um, and we do get feedback. We've been actually testing out this new thing where we'll post a story and people can message us with a specific keyword, and then we send them more information about the story. And we've been getting hundreds of people asking us to do that. So we are reaching an audience there, and it's a fast growing audience. And we do get interaction. The raw numbers off the top of my head, I don't know. I could find that out for you, but I do know that TikTok has been our fastest growing audience, and it is an engaged audience.
You talked previously about balance and what is and isn't balance. Can you talk about the Fairness Act and the loss of the Fairness Act? And um, is there any way to return to those kind of standards in media?
So the Fairness Act, if I understand, was the law that required equal presentation of both sides, and it applied mostly to TV journalism. I personally don't think the government has any business telling any news organization what they should or shouldn't do. Because who decides what's fair? Who decides which
Mm.
sides get represented? Quite frankly, we're still a two-party system for the most part, but there's so many factions within each party that we're almost not anymore. And who's to say who gets a voice? I don't think that person should be the federal government. So uh, I think that if a news outlet wants to be one-sided and wants to only speak to a particular audience, the First Amendment protects that. I think that's irresponsible and a bad thing to do, but I don't think anybody should be telling any news organization that they ought to be one thing or another because, again, who decides who gets the voice and what equals fair and all of that. So yeah, I think that we should strive to have uh, equal representation of valid viewpoints. Valid being, uh, an easily demonstrable falsehood should not get equal time with an easily demonstrable truth. Um, but we should strive to point out varying sides of an issue. But I don't think that the federal government should decide what a news outlet does.
Another one, this is an interesting one. Do you use AI to keep up with messages that come in from readers?
So that's a great question. I actually, Bridge does a lot of our work by committee, and I was on a committee that helped write our Bridge's AI policy. Um, we will experiment with AI, and but we will not use AI to produce news. Every news item that you're reading in Bridge was put together by human hands, reviewed by human eyes, um, and that's by policy. Now we do test and experiment with AI to help us do some of our work. For example, we just published a very big series on troubles with nursing homes, and we got mountains of records as part of that story, and we experimented with using AI to help us sort through and catalog those records. It didn't work. We had to do it the old-fashioned way, but we tried it.
Wow.
So we're willing to use AI to help us do our jobs better, but we're never going to use AI to put together news.
And finally, you mentioned a couple of stories that you have worked on in the past, but do you have any other stories that you've worked on that are your favorite or you're most proud of?
Mm, boy. So my favorite story I've ever done was one I did in Battle Creek. There's a little boy who was raising funds for his sister who had cancer, and he was collecting pennies during lunch hour at his elementary school so that the family could go to Disney World before she passed. And I
Mm.
had the honor of spending time with that family and meeting them. And I still have you can't see it, but on the billboard, one of the cork boards behind me, I still have her photo
Oh,
because she reminds me that what we do is about people. It's not about politicians. It's not about facts and numbers, even. It's about people and telling people's stories. So that is my favorite story that I've ever worked on. But I've had a lot of fun with lots of other stories. I just did a story about a plane, a Russian plane in Marquette that's been grounded since 2009 because of this big fight over who had ownership of the plane. And it's got this really fascinating story. There were Russians on, or I'm sorry, Ukrainians on board who got deported and all these people arguing over who owned the plane, and it was just a fun story to go through the records and unpack what happened. um those are my favorite kind of stories where you get to dig in and there's a little bit of a mystery involved for me to solve. um but yeah, definitely that young boy and his sister, my favorite story.
a great story. I don't have any more questions in the chat. I don't know if there's anybody else that might have a question they want to.
I think one person did. Diane just sent, is there one last one?
Uh,
How are we doing for time? We're getting close to the end.
oh, there is one.
Okay.
Uh, Diane sent one. On the media partnership, how does it work? Is there any financial requirement?
So it is funded by the Press Forward Northern Michigan chapter, which
Okay.
is Press Forward is a national movement to strengthen local media with financial backing. So it is funded, and we do pay reporters from the outlets when they work on regional stories that serve the collaborative. So we pay the reporters directly for their work to give them, if they're working their 9 to 5 job and they spend a little bit of extra time at six making a story that's regional and serves all of us, we're paying them for that. So yes, there's no requirement for the papers who are part of it. They don't pay us. It's funded by Press Forward, and we pay the reporters.
Hmm.
Justin, thank you so much. This was, I think, exactly what we all hoped. And members, thank you for your participation. There have been close to 35 of us coming and going. Um, so we've learned a lot. I cannot recommend enough that you join the newsletters, read the daily,
Hmm.
sign up for Justin's newsletter. I just did a survey. You were asking your readers what we want you to cover. I'm not sure any newspapers ever asked me that before.
Mm.
Um, so we aren't having a meeting after this. Often we need to. That is part of being a league, is having in person and meetings online. We have forums the second Wednesday of February and March. Um, those were advertised in the newsletter you all just got, and you'll get emails about them. So hope we have good participation for those. The March one will probably be hybrid, in person and Zoom. Um, so watch for that. Thank you for your interest. Thank you, Justin, for your time. And have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.